All right, this is very, very interesting. This is interesting because it's not outrage or opposition. It is confusion that we are now seeing on Fox News. And this is a form of confusion that I believe is dangerous for the administration. I'm going to play a video for you from Fox News where you've got Kat Timpf, who is a political commentator, and Greg Gutfeld, who I guess is a comedian, but sometimes he's a political commentator. I don't know. They are, normally when you turn on this show, they are rationalizing and justifying anything that Republicans are doing and anything that Donald Trump is doing. You can see them visibly struggling to make sense of the logic of Donald Trump's kidnap of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. We're going to hear from Kat Timpf. We're going to hear from Greg Gutfeld and some of the others on this panel. And it is fascinating to see that the people that normally have no issue figuring out how to justify what Donald Trump is doing are struggling to justify what Donald Trump has done.
You have to see how some people might be feeling a little bit of whiplash here, given that Trump spent 10 years railing against U.S.-led regime change war. His own director of intelligence, as recently as 2 months ago, was railing against regime change war, and then he does one. So
is this a regime change? The regime is still there, as far as I know. Vice President.
All right, let's already pause. Okay, there's two great things here. Kat Timpf correctly points out we were sold this is the guy against regime change wars, and he's trying to do regime change. That's true. Gutfeld is also right, which is this even regime change? Because they've taken Maduro, but left the regime completely in charge, including the acting president being the former vice president. So they're both right about the absurdity. Trump went back on his promise of not doing this type of thing. And also, as a regime change operation, it seems to be failing because they're not changing the regime.
Let me get this straight. We go to a country, we capture their leader, we bomb it, and then we say, we run this country now. And that's not war. But when they say send cocaine over here that people are willingly snorting, that is war.
All right, let me pause it again. Earlier in the show, I mentioned to you that missing from the discussion about the narco trafficking justification for the bombing of the Venezuelan boats and the kidnapping of Nicolas Maduro, I mentioned that missing from the conversation is the acknowledgement that there is so much demand for these drugs in the United States that they're going to get in one way or the other. People love this shit and it's going to get in. And we need to be dealing with the demand for it. At least Kat Timpf is pointing out that the people snorting the cocaine, they like the cocaine. They want the cocaine. And that is a war. But what Donald Trump just did to Venezuela is not an act of war?
I think that
doesn't make any sense.
It does to me in the sense that if this guy is committing crimes against the United States, you lawfully go and get him. He gets his due process here. The regime is still the same. The VP's there. He wasn't the elected. Remember, he wasn't elected legitimately. So he was never considered the leader of Venezuela by anybody except for himself. So I think it was, difference of opinion, but he wasn't considered a legitimate leader. He had committed crimes against the country. He's going to get his due process. He may be found not guilty. Who knows?
We went in, took him, bombed the country, and said we're in control of it. That's regime change war. That's a guy being like, that's like a guy being like, hey, I did bang all these other girls behind your back, but I didn't cheat. You can call it whatever you want, but it is what it is.
That's the analogy you always use.
Okay, well, look, having concerns about this, it's very understandable. A lot of people feel skeptical that this isn't going to be the one that's different than all the other ones.
Yeah.
A lot of people are skeptical. For me personally, I'm not so confident that this is the one that this is not the regime change that's finally going to work the way we say it's going to work. I would not willingly go die for it. I would not willingly send my son to go die for it. So
you get the picture. So this is very interesting. This is not generic anti-war activism from Kat Timpf. This is not a left-wing critique from Kat Timpf. This is just the inability to justify what is going on in Venezuela, even when looked at through a Fox News lens. Trump's framing requires people to believe two totally contradictory things at once. That massive military force isn't war when we do it, but that social problems in the United States, demand for drugs, becomes an act of war when it's politically useful to say, well, by supplying the drugs, Venezuela is engaging in war. And even the Fox hosts are tripping all over it. Now, what's happening here, there's a subtlety to it, but it's important. Fox News's typical role, as I said, is translate the chaos of this administration into coherence that the supporters can line up behind and say, we support this. Take Trump's impulses and sort of retrofit them, mold them like a piece of Play-Doh into a mold where we can say, here's the 3 talking points of why this is a great thing. In this case, there is no coherent explanation that doesn't collapse under a little bit of scrutiny. And so you get bewilderment. Well, it was regime change, which Trump was against, and it also failed as regime change. And it was about drugs, but it wasn't because we've also pardoned other narco traffickers. Wait a second. So what is going on here? And so as you see the gears grinding slowly, shaking off the rust here, you start to consider Trump doesn't lose support when people disagree with him. He loses support when people just can't explain what he's doing anymore. And when we see the Fox hosts fail to square the circle, that's a sign that even the friendly media ecosystem is starting to short circuit under the weight of what Donald Trump is doing. Now, in the meantime, Trump didn't exactly have a good night, and I want to take a few minutes just to talk about that. Appreciate you watching. Stick around for this next video, and don't forget to hit subscribe so you actually see our uploads. You can also catch the full podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.